Afternoon, wherever and whenever in the world you're watching this. It's just such a great time to be alive with all this technology that lets me do this sitting in my kitchen in my new place in Oceanside, California. And haven't gotten my office set up. I was in there this morning trying to set it up. There was people working outside. I was like, oh my gosh, Laura, we're not going to be able to do this. And then my office was really hot, and oh my gosh. So here we are. Laura had to reschedule, and I made some mistakes on her posting, and she was kind enough to gently, say, hey. And that was when I was in kind of a funk. And sometimes my depression gets me, and sometimes I forget to take my medicine, and I don't eat right, and blah, 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 blah. So I was in the darkness for a while, and I had some things happen to me that were devastating. So here we are. Now, I'm going to let Laura introduce herself, and we are going to talk about interviewing skills, tips, everything and anything about interviewing. And so if you're here and you want to ask us a question, just reach out. Okay, Laura, fire away.
Good afternoon, good morning. Well, it's afternoon here in the New York area. I'm in New York and you're in California. So I'm very excited and very pleased and honored to be on your show, Joan. My full name is Laura Rivchun, and I am an interview coach. I wasn't always a coach. If you'd like, I can tell you just a little bit about myself and how I came to be where I am today. Initially, I started off a career in music. I studied music, and after studying, fast forward into many years ago, I was a performer. I ended up singing in Argentina. And it wasn't for lack of talent. It was, yes, I know I'm dating myself when I say I was singing disco, and it was wonderful. It was very exciting to perform in another country, in front of very large audiences. I was sent over by an impresario who had great connections, so we sang in a huge stadium. But there were things that started to occur with myself. I couldn't, after a performance, I would listen to the tape of the performance, and I would be a very harsh critic, which I always have been. And I certainly can relate to other people who are their own self-harsh critics.
That's common, huh?
Yes. And it was very difficult for me to turn off my own tapes of this doesn't sound good enough. And after coming back from Argentina, I made a decision that if music was not going to be something of joy for me, I took the joy out of it myself because of what was going on upstairs.
Wow.
Yeah. It took me 6 months to sign with a manager. We went into the studio to record for a demo for a major record label. So we got that far. I put together a portfolio, but these tapes couldn't stop. So I stopped singing. I gave up something that I love, that is still a big part of my heart. And fast forward years later, I ended up being an executive recruiter and lost my job in 2008 when everyone else did because of the crash. And that's when I said, well, why don't I reinvent myself, take all the experience that I've had as a recruiter. I always went above and beyond. And I always loved the idea, even when I was a very, very young woman, I loved the idea of making a difference and having impact in someone's life. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I was doing that as a recruiter, but coaching and doing my own thing is something that I feel I can have an impact, because I understand what it's like to have a dream or want something, be fearful because of the stories we tell ourselves and our narratives, and lack of confidence. So I'm very passionate about helping people get past that. So I work with seasoned professionals. I work with young professionals, millennials, undergraduate students, professionals that are looking to get into MBA programs, and I help them refine their interview skills because, for the most part, it has nothing to do with how smart one is or how experienced. Interviewing is a skill you either have or you don't have, or you can work on and develop. And most people rather go to the dentist than go on a job interview. So here I am. Yeah, this is what I do. And I love feeling that I can make a difference and help someone, be the champion, be their cheerleader. In many ways, you're a cheerleader too. And we all need that. So I've taken all this experience I've had and some of the hardships, and I'm doing something that makes me feel like I'm doing some good in the world, and with the skills that I have. So that's me, sort of in a nutshell.
That's amazing, and I just think it all ties back into interviewing coaching, because what I wrote down was you were taking the joy out of the singing and the performing because of what was going on upstairs. And I think that directly relates to sitting in front of a board at an interview and all the tapes are going. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if that's what's going on, and very often it is, it can hinder one's performance.
Of course.
And I have worked with a lot of undergraduate students, and in a mock, this is one of the things that I start off with when I work with clients. The best way for me to make an assessment where someone's skills lie and where they need more development is in a mock interview, as though it's the real deal. And I've done hundreds and hundreds of them for students, undergraduate college students. And it's so interesting to me how I'd be in the interview in the mock, and they stumble through their words. They'd stumble through their story or in their answer, and they'd say, "Oh, I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous." And the more nervous they'd get and the more they'd say it, the more nervous they'd get. And that would impair their performance even more so. And I would always gently try to say, because I give a lot of feedback, feedback is super important. And I'd say, I understand your nervousness. We all get that, but you don't have to draw attention. You don't have to let the listener know how nervous you are. It may not be showing as much as you feel it shows. So it's like drawing attention to something negative. And when you do that, you don't know what that interviewer is thinking about you. Like, why are they talking about how nervous they're going to be? And then they start to think, if I hire this person and we're in a major presentation with a client or whatever, we're in some kind of important meeting, and you keep talking about being nervous while you're talking, that's not going to look very professional. So these little things are so key. So
absolutely. So do you have like 5 top tips, or how do you want to tell our audience how you can be their champion, their cheerleader, which I just love, so that I'm at the interview and I have this kind of virtual person sitting in my ear, or like Jiminy Cricket sitting in my pocket and coaching and helping me.
Well, you just brought up something that comes up a lot with clients, no matter how experienced or inexperienced they are, and no matter how old they are. It has nothing to do. So many, excuse me, it seems like so many people who are in an interview and who I do the mock with, when they're in the mock, they don't know that it's important. One of your jobs as an interviewee is to promote yourself. It doesn't have to be in a very boasting way, but how do you shine? How can you shine? And if someone asks you, well, for instance, why did you go into the finance industry? Most people very often give me the answer because I liked finance. I was very interested when I was very young. And I always say, okay, that's fine. But how about, doesn't it have more impact if you say, I'm good at it? or I'm good at something. I have some really great skills for finance. I have great skills for marketing, or whatever it is. That has more impact. And that's a way that you can stand stand above the rest of the herd. So I think self-promotion in that way, talk about your skills. And I feel when someone asks you, very often an interview starts off where the interviewer says, "So tell me about yourself."
Right, right.
Yes, that is the piece that most people don't do well at.
Mhm.
They start to get lost, they ramble, they lose their focus. And I always say this is an opportunity. It's a small window of opportunity for you to shine. And that's where you can talk about some of the things that you've done in your background that you're proud of and why you're proud of them, and give measurables, give specific examples. That's a way to shine.
Mhm.
And I always tell my clients, because people always say to me, "Oh, I don't know, it's kind of, I'm working with someone right now." And I've said to him, you had an opportunity, and I know you're smart. You had a wonderful opportunity when I asked you a certain question, and you didn't jump on that opportunity to really shine. And he said, "I don't know. I think it's a little, it's kind of obnoxious and boasting." And I said, "Well, let's put it this way. When you're in that interview, who's going to do it for you if you don't do it? The fly on the wall? I'm not the fly on the wall. I'm not going to be there holding your hand." Yes, there's a way to finesse how you can self-promote without sounding salesy and without sounding like you're arrogant. Absolutely. Um, I think there are very often key things that come up that I've noticed in the years that I've been doing this. Um, People lack focus.
Key
And
key things for in all interviews across the all your experience. These things come up that will ask you about this.
know that I notice that I
Oh, okay,
notice when in the mock
okay,
interview that people seem to do. There are certain common things that
okay.
candidates, clients, whatever, I call them my clients, but they're candidates going for a job, that
Sure.
seem to be very common. One of them is they're very, very nervous, and they talk about being nervous. That's a no-no. Um, they lack focus. They start to ramble. If they're asked a question, they go off on a tangent.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I know that's difficult. And I know in an interview, because I know that sometimes I tend to do this, it's very easy to do, to just go off topic, but people have a short attention span. So,
Right.
so you have to stay focused, and not asking anyone to give a one word or two word answer. Give an answer that is engaging, but don't go off into a tangent that has nothing to do with what you're being asked or what you're sharing. Uh, a huge deal break, I call it a deal breaker, is what I call TMI, too much information. Being you're laughing, and being really inappropriate. I have one memory of working with a young professional. She was doing a terrific job in the interview. Then I asked her one specific question, and in her answer, it showed that she was quite biased. She said something that you cannot say. You can never bring up religion, politics. I know there are people that do. You just don't. I always tell my clients, you don't know the person sitting across from you. You don't know how they feel about religion or about any kind of politics. You don't know what their leanings are. So they may not show that they're a little disturbed by your answer, but they'll remember that, because there's such a thing as the negativity bias. You can do all the right things, but what is going to be mostly remembered when you walk out the door from an interview? That interviewer will remember the one answer they didn't like. That's how it works. Does that make
Wow.
sense?
Wow. So tell me, what is the negativity bias?
The negativity bias is, for some reason, it seems to be human nature, the human condition, that people seem to latch onto remember more negative emotions or negative actions
Right.
more than positive. It seems to be a human condition, and
You
it
know,
really.
yeah, I heard that if you go to a restaurant and you love it, you'll tell like 3 people. And if you go to a restaurant and you don't like it,
Exactly. That's
you tell
exactly
like
my point.
10 people and more. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So I try to share that with my clients that this really exists. And it happened with me when I was with this one young woman who was really bright and she was well prepared in the mock interview. She said one thing that was it offended me actually. And my job as a coach is to help my clients and show them what they do well. I think that's important. They know that, but what they can improve on. And I asked her, I said, "Are you aware of what you said and the impact that that could have?" I said, "If this were the real interview," I said, "I don't think I would have brought you back." I have to be honest that way. And there's a fine line being honest and being harsh. I try to deliver my my feedback so my clients go away feeling positive. But this was such a poor decision she made in her answer, and it had such a negative impact on me, and I was offended. It
Mm.
wasn't about me, but it was about a group of people. And I said, "You have to understand, you just cannot say things like that in an interview. You don't know the person sitting across from you. You don't know them from Adam. Maybe they woke up on the wrong side of the bed." I think very often I do tell one client I'm working with now, I've said to, because he's very bright, and I've said to him, it's better when you give an answer, if you're not sure of the answer, to ask the interviewer, "Can you give me a few moments? That's an interesting question," rather than just blurt out an answer, which most people tend to do. They just, before they think, and then they say something that is out there in the universe. They've said it, they can't unsay it.
Right.
And we've
Right.
all been in that situation where we've said something and 2 seconds later we say to ourselves, "Ouch, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that." But it's said.
And
It's said.
I'm trying to grab the words. No, no, put them
Right,
back in my
right,
mouth. But you can't do it.
right. I think another issue that is very common with interviewers, um, I think a lot of people, they don't prepare,
Mm,
and they don't know how to prepare.
mm,
I think a
mhm.
lot of people, they think that preparing for an interview is getting on the company's website and reading about the company.
Mhm,
That's part of it,
mhm,
knowing about the company. But a very big part, and I think the biggest part, is sitting with yourself and your resume in front of you and going through your professional history, your educational background, and think about questions that might be asked. Why was there a gap? Why is there a 3-year gap here? Someone may ask you that. Nowadays, it's very different because we're in the time of COVID where a lot of people have lost their work, and I don't think it's the same rule. But years ago, when I was a recruiter, I remember I would have to, representing the candidate to the company, the client, I'd have to understand why there was a gap, because my clients would ask me, "Why didn't they work for 3 years?" So you have to know your own background, the dates, and most importantly, you have to know what did you do to add to the bottom line at that particular company? What did you accomplish? And you have to say it. You can't just say, "Well, I I I initiated a program that really made a difference for the company." That's a very blanket thing to say. You have to be more specific and say how it impacted the company in a very positive way. I call it with measurables. You have
mhm.
to say, give an answer that shows that this really occurred and give an example.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also a way of self-promoting.
Mm-hmm.
I really think a lot of people don't really know themselves very well.
Oh,
One of
I agree with that
you
100%.
do.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm curious, how have you found that in your kind of work? Just
Just when I ask people, what are your likes? What are your dislikes? What are your wants? I have an exercise that I called want and don't want. And what do you have in your life right now that you don't want? What don't you have in your life that you do want?
that's
And
that's a great question.
it takes people a while to,
Here's one.
and they come up with a short list instead of start writing.
Right. And this is something that I talk about with my clients and it seems to absolutely be more of an issue with younger professionals. I don't expect someone who is in their early 20s, who's just getting started in their career, to really know themselves like somebody who's been around for a long time. And with age, one of the good things with age as we get older is that we learn, we gain, hopefully we gain some wisdom and we learn about ourselves. So one of the questions that I've asked, particularly one of the positions that I held for quite a few years and it ended because of COVID, I coached hundreds of students as a consultant at Rutgers University at their
Nice.
business school. Yeah, and I loved it. I love working with the young people as well. And I would ask that question. I'd ask while we're in the mock, so how do you think you're unique? And see the look on my face. Their eyes would widen like the deer in the headlights, like, oh, I've never been asked that before. And it would be a question that I'd say 90% of them could not answer, or if they did answer, they'd say something that sounded scripted, like, I'm a people person.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of the questions
Fast
that
learner. I'm a fast learner. Everyone's a fast learner. Don't even say it.
That's a really interesting point you just brought up too. It's great. You're like reading my mind here because there's so many things that come up. One of the things when I ask a client in the mock is, so what, and they are asked this a lot in a real interview. So tell me, why are you interested in interviewing for this position?
I hear. Yeah,
And a classic answer is, I think, they may say one or two facts, maybe they read on the website, but they'll say, I think it's a really good opportunity for me, and I know I could learn a lot, and I really love learning. When it comes time for me to give the feedback, and I say, now in this answer, how do you think that might land on someone listening to your answer? I said, do you think what, and then I asked them, what do you think sounds better if you were to ask me that question? So like we turn the tables around and say, ask me that question. And then I say, they ask me, so why are you interested in this position? And my answer would be, well, I've read, you have, I love your mission statement, what you stand for. You're a big, well-known global firm, blah, blah, blah. But it's a great opportunity for me to use a lot of the skills that I have that I know are required in this position. And I want to use those skills that I've developed, and then I'll tell them what those skills are. And then I ask the client, what do you think has more impact? Which answer? And they'd say, the one you gave. And then I say, because, and I'm not making fun of your answer, it's great to want to learn, but you're not going to get hired. I don't think you're going to get hired because you tell the interview, I love to learn. You're going to get hired because of what you can do for them.
That's interesting because it's almost like what I'm hearing is you're kind of pulling a little bit out of the very first question, where the very first question was, tell me about yourself. So it's almost like in Toastmasters, they say to tell everybody 3 times. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them again. And so maybe the person has already told the skills in the first question. But now I'm just kind of reminding you why I want to work here is because I have all these skills. I love it. It's like a circle. It's like wrapping it up in a bow.
But you'd be surprised, Joan, how many people don't talk about their skills. And I tell them it's particularly with younger people getting started. When I worked at Rutgers, the Office of Career Management, the executive director there said, I would like you to ask that question. Tell me about yourself. I want to see if they're talking about their transferable skills, because so many of these students would, they'd be going for an internship in finance, and they're a finance major, but they have no work history in finance. They're young. They've worked in, a store. They've worked on a golf course or whatever, in a restaurant. They're not expected necessarily to have but there are skills they've developed. And I believe this with all of us. We always develop certain skills that we can take to a lot of different positions. And a lot of those skills are soft skills.
And then it reminds me of, especially now, maybe not when we were interviewing, people are looking for rounded employees. So what do you think about at some point during that? Tell me about yourself. Well, I love to mountain climb and I love to kayak.
It's interesting. This is a testament to what a great interviewer I think you are. You're almost thinking of the questions that I was about to
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I think this is great. You bring up another excellent point, because this is the truth. I remember there was a gentleman who I was interviewing, and I asked him, tell me about yourself. And he started to tell me, well, I'm a Rutgers student, a finance major. I'm a father. I'm married. I have 3 kids. I love to spend time with my kids on a Friday night. We'll watch movies together and have pizza. And then he went on, and I let him hang himself. And I asked him when the interview was over, when the mock was over, I said, I understand, and I respect that you love your children. You should love your children. They should be the world to you. But do you think that's important to someone who wants to hire you? Do you think you're going to get hired because you're a good dad, or because you have a good background and you have great skills? So it's more important, I think, to talk about, and then you're telling very personal information. You're sharing personal things in the first interview. That's not really the place to share anything personal unless you're asked. So what do you do in your free time? A lot of people ask that. What do you like to do? And I think it is because people tend to undersell themselves. I think it is great to share. I volunteer. I always talk about my volunteer work. I think that says a lot about a person's character. I volunteer. Or, if you talk about going to the beach and things like that, that's okay. But I would talk about things, if someone has it in their background, about things that do say a lot about you as a person, as a well-rounded person. And people, I think, people meaning clients, candidates, interviewees, don't look at it that way. They think, well, okay, so I'm a member of a few interesting organizations, and they don't talk about it. Or I won best several years in a row. I won best salesperson in the company. They don't talk about those things. Or 4 years in a row, they were on the dean's list at an excellent Ivy League school. And they don't talk about that. And it's like, I'm trying to shine a light on them and show them because I did not know how to do that when I was performing. And I didn't know how to look at myself and say, I am really talented. I have certain things that I need work on. But so it's so important to me that in the time that I work with my clients, that I say, look at your background. This is excellent what you've done here. Don't you think that's going to show that you're, you are a well-rounded person? You're not just a person who goes to work. You're a person who has other interests and other skills that you learn from those interests.
Well, I guess sometimes for me, when I'm interviewing or when I had been interviewing, it's like, yeah, that doesn't quite fit into any of the questions. So I don't know when to say it.
Well, I think the time to say it is if you are asked, tell me about yourself. You try to include, and you don't want to make it a 10-minute, novel. You certainly can't do that. You don't want it to be too short or too long, but you can include your work, some of your accomplishments, and then add. And also, I head up a mentorship committee at a women's organization. I'm giving you this as just as an example. And that really helps me in the kind of work that I do as well. I think everything we do there's like a thread in our lives that is very much tied in.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just takes someone outside of, outside of ourselves,
Right.
like a coach, like someone like you or me, or someone who knows us really well, to shine that light on us. I just, the more I do this, the more I see that. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and I talk about this, and I write copy about this, about just standing in your own light and not being afraid to do that. And I understand partly why I do that. It's because I didn't know how to do that. So I want to give that to other people. That is so important to me.
That reminds me of Marianne Williamson quote. I don't know if you know Marianne Williamson, where she says, it's a long quote, but she says, you're playing small does not serve the world. And the more you be you, it gives other people permission to be them.
Totally. And by the way, that's another thing. I love quotes. I love quotes. I may have read that one. They have a tremendous, words have such power, such
Right. That's so important.
Really do. Yeah. So that's one of the things that I tell clients when I work with them. I said, all you have in this half hour or 1 hour interview with this person who knows nothing about you, and they have the ability to say, I want to move forward with this candidate. I want my partner to meet you. Or they can say, thank you very much. No, thank you. You have a very small window of opportunity.
Exactly.
Yeah. So make the best of it. And do I always do that when I've been in? No, but we learn from someone who says, this, you didn't do this, or you did do this. And I really believe that interviewing is, some people are naturally better at it. But it is definitely a skill you can develop, and practice makes perfect. I remember when I was a recruiter and I would work with a candidate that I saw, and there's an expression we have in the recruitment industry, they're a walking placement. In other words, anywhere you send them, they'll get an offer. And I would say to them, if you can, if you're interested in this position, or if you're semi-interested, go on it. It's great practice. It's great practice, because the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the more confidence you'll develop. So those are things I work on with my clients as well, confidence, because that's a really, really big issue. Whether it's someone who's just getting started, and I think people who are in their later part of their career, and because of COVID, they've lost their job and now they have to look for work again, and they've been out of work. And I remember there was one client who even said to me, and it really hit me. She said, I don't know who I am anymore.
Was she about 40?
Older.
Oh, yeah. See, and
Yeah, oh,
shoot,
yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out who I am. I mean, people
We
look
all
at
are. Yeah.
look at all the saints and all the people, the mystics and everything. They were trying their whole lives and theology. And I had a couple things I wrote down that I wanted to ask you about. Unless you have another topic you're ready to go on to.
No, ask away.
Okay. What about humor? Like when you say tell me about yourself, I jokingly want to say, because I am sarcastic and I am funny, I want to say, well, I like walks on the beach and I like to watch the sunset. I'm just joking, and then go, no, just kidding, and then tell them what I really just tell me. Humor is allowed.
That's a great question. That's really a great question, Joan. I know you have a great sense of humor. I am drawn to people who have a good sense of humor. I have a good sense of humor. Humor gets us, and I'm sure you know this, humor gets us through our lives. Without humor, when I lose my sense of humor, I know that I'm in trouble.
Absolutely.
But here is, in an interview, you don't know that person, and you don't know their
Good point. Good point.
You don't know their sense of humor.
When I
You
say
may say something that you think is funny, and they're sitting there and they're like stone-faced. And I have met many people, and I've worked with clients where I see that they're nervous, and I try to make them feel comfortable, and they have no sense of humor. And I say to myself, well, maybe they do have a sense of humor, but they're nervous and they're afraid to come out of their shell. So you have to be careful. If you are a person, if an interviewee is a person that has good intuition and perception of people, and in my kind of work, that's what you need. If you're a person who says, I know that I read people well, and if you trust that in your gut, and you're in an interview and you get a sense that the interviewer is warmer and opens up and is not to give too much information, I'm not talking about that, and they have a good sense of humor, you can show your sense of humor. But in other words, you mimic how they are. They always say, when you're on a sales call, if you're sensing that someone is very busy and you start to chat a lot, you pick up their vibe, you pick up their energy, and you go with that. So I think it's the same thing in an interview, and one has to be really careful about that, because we can know someone, we can be friends with someone for quite a while and still maybe not get their sense of humor. That's a very personal thing. So I'm glad you brought that up. I don't think I've ever had anyone ask me about her. I think humor is great. It shows personality. But one might think, and we don't know the assumptions and perceptions people make, what's going on upstairs. One might think, if you're making jokes, that you're trying to evade the answer, or you're nervous.
right.
I don't make the rules. I really don't.
No, that's great. That's great input.
I don't mean to sound like, I don't want people to be afraid, because I know so many of us go into an interview and they're afraid. And what is difficult about the interview process in general is that we're asked to be ourselves in a very uncomfortable scenario, where one person holds all the cards, they ask all the questions. And I also tell my clients, I say, go in there with the attitude in your head, you're interviewing them as well. So go in feeling confident, and not that you lead the interview. I've been in some interviews where people have not asked me anything, and then I've started having a conversation just so I could get more of an idea of the position, because not everyone's a good knows how to interview a candidate. But I think it is it's a very uncomfortable situation to be. It's kind of like not normal. I always compare a job interview as a blind date, only a bad blind date. It's kind of like a blind date. You're trying to get to know someone. You can't share all your everything. You have to edit. You have to edit. Which brings me, if I may share this, to one question that 90% of people, whatever their background and however much experience they have, that they don't know how to answer is that question, that classic question that everybody is asked. So tell me.
Wait, can I guess it? Can I guess it?
What's your magic? You're
My
thinking.
guess is the last question. Like, do you have anything to add, or is there anything else you'd like to tell? No?
Nope. That is a very important question too, though.
Okay.
No, the question is, so tell me, I just asked you what your asset is. These are your strengths. What's your greatest weakness?
I hate that question.
Everybody. I wrote a post.
What is the purpose? What is the purpose of that question?
I think in a way it's to trip people up.
Definitely. So almost like if you ask me that question, I don't want to work for you.
No, I think it's to see how the person sitting across from you, the person you might want to hire, how they handle themselves in an uncomfortable situation, because no one wants to talk about their weakness. And I've had people who've said to me, I can't really think of anything. And when I give them feedback, I say, you have weaknesses. We all do. And when someone is asking that of you, they're not really asking. I don't think they're asking, is your weakness computer skills? They're asking something behaviorally. Something you might.
Oh, I had never thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, what is an example? Because I certainly don't want to say, my weakness is I have a really hard time getting to work on time. That's the truth, right? But you can't say that.
And you just brought up another thing. I tell, because when we go over this and I give feedback, I say, I'm not asking you to be a liar. Omitting, because lying would be not good. Lying about where you went to school, lying on your resume or lying about a position is not a good thing. But it's in good practice to edit out the things that could hurt you in an interview. Omitting something that will hurt you doesn't make you a liar. It makes you smart in an interview. That's one of the things you can't say. Think if you were hiring someone and they say, well, yeah, I'm really bad with time management. Would that make you question them? It may be true, but do you have to tell that person? It's not written on your head. Mm-hmm. I'm bad with time management. Don't hire me. It's like saying to that person, forget about me. Don't hire me. When you say something like that. Here's another one you should never say. What's your weakness? I'll give you an exact scenario. I don't handle criticism very well. Okay, this is a true scenario with me. Okay, so this is the candidate. This is the student saying this, the client. And I'd say, oh, well, what happens when
right, tell me more about that. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I get a little defensive. Oh, what happens when you get defensive? Do you have a hissy fit? This is me doing the mock. Do you sit in the corner and do you punch someone's lights out? And when I gave him the feedback, I said, can you see why you hung yourself? That the interview would be over if someone said that. I don't see, and it may be true. Another one is people think I don't think it's a great answer. What is another weakness? What's a weakness of yours? Well, I'm very detail oriented, so I tend to like double check. Sometimes I triple check my work. Think about what could be the consequences of someone saying I triple check my work. They're spending too much time going over, and they doubt themselves. So the interviewer's thinking, okay, well, they're triple checking this project. What's happening to the other things? Are they falling by the wayside? You don't know how people think in your answer. Does that make sense?
So then you said 90%, I wrote down 90% get this wrong. So what is the answer?
I always like to think of an answer that is kind of true to issues we do have. And my answer, because I've been asked this, and my answer is I am my toughest critic. I have very high standards. I I give I'm hard on myself. It's not the same thing as saying I'm a perfectionist because that's so overused. It sounds like someone read it on the internet. I happen to be a perfectionist, but I don't use that. Um, no one is not going to hire you, I don't think, because you have a high standard. Not only for myself, I have a high standard with colleagues. I have high standards and I'm hard on myself. I'm tough on myself. And someone may say, well, what do you do? How does that impact your work? And it doesn't impact my work. I'm just intense about my work. I'm an intense person. I know that. I have strong likes. Um, Another one that I use, which is very true to who I am, I'll say I tend to overthink things. I can overanalyze at times. I have that kind of mind. Or you can say it's all the way you frame it. I've had people say to me in asking that question of them, um, I don't I don't like saying no, and then I put them in a corner in the mock because I want them to see how that can go downhill. And I say, oh, what happens? Are you a doormat? Someone may say that to you. Well, I really don't like to say no. I don't think that's a great thing to say.
It's tough. I ask my clients, almost all of them,
Mhm.
how difficult is it for you to say this really big word and oh, and they just go, I can't do it. I would say 90% say, I can't do it. Yep.
Yeah, I think certain questions that are asked in an interview are asked for a reason because it shows how you're going to play in the sandbox. Um, how they inadvertently show how you feel about yourself. If you're confident, if you have a strong sense of yourself, people are turned on by that. If you come off like, oh, I don't know. I mean, if you think I've gone into every interview, if you think I wasn't nervous about today with you, of course I was. That we always want to be at our best, to show our best if it's on a public platform or if it's in a scenario where someone can hire you and that's your dream job. And that's why it's hard because you're asked to be yourself in many ways. You want who you are to shine, your good qualities, um, and you don't want to seem wooden. You don't want to seem. I mean, have you ever talked to anyone or interviewed someone who sounded like you swore they read it from a script?
And they sound like a perfect candidate, but almost like a Stepford wife.
Exactly. Exactly. And getting back to the question that you actually, the client I'm working with now, very bright man, very bright young man. When I did the mock with him, the first coaching session I had, I did the mock with him. And my last question was, do you have any questions? And
Okay. Do you have any questions? I feel like that is norm or and questions or anything to add, closing statement, whatever. That seems to be the last of every interview that I've been on.
well, and one of the things that I tell my clients, I say, I don't have all the answers. No one has all the answers. I have a lot of them because I have real-time experience as a recruiter working
Exactly.
working with
Exactly.
clients. One of my biggest clients was Goldman Sachs at one staffing firm I worked for 3 years. And if you don't think that trying to get someone hired at Goldman is not easy. It's like CIA. I learned a lot when I was in that position. So the answers that I'm providing, the feedback that I'm providing comes from my interactions and my relationships with real clients, real organizations. And I remember vividly a financial firm. I brought in a really good candidate, and I would always ask my candidates when I was a recruiter, when you get out of the interview, give me a call. I want to know how it went. I want to know if you're interested in moving forward, what was said, blah, blah, blah. Then I want to call the client and see if they're interested in moving forward. And I remember the client said to me, I was a little surprised that this position that they're going in for, which is pretty complex, when I asked them if they had any questions, they didn't. I just thought that odd. And that's what stood out in her mind.
Definitely. And talk about, what did you call it? The negativity?
Negativity bias.
Negativity bias, yeah.
Look it up. It's like
thing. They were up here and then down there.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know the right questions to ask. A lot of
my gosh, definitely. Because I have sat on the other side so many times, and I have made up fantastic questions, of course, because I made them up. And then my boss has changed them to, what is your weakness? What is your strength? Tell us about a situation where you failed. And I'm like, so you're telling me 90% of the people don't do well in that question. Take the question out. Don't ask the question. What value as the interviewer are you getting from asking a question that most people fail?
Well, I'm referring to the questions that the interviewee is asking when the interviewer asks the candidate, do you have any questions?
Oh, sure.
Yes. Sure. The candidates don't know the right questions to ask.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about, because I did have down here that
I'm sorry.
The interviewer is also nervous and also unfocused and also
not like the interviewee, though.
Yeah, that's true.
And there are interviewers who, because of who they may be, will deliberately try and make it tough for you and want to see how you handle yourself and squirm in the seat. I'm not that kind of person. I would never. I ask certain pointed questions. And actually, my style when I work with my clients, because a lot of the candidates, particularly when I was at Rutgers, they said to me, I felt very comfortable with you. I liked you. You showed your personality. You were funny. I said, well, my style is very different than a lot of other coaches. I said, I deliberately, and I'm a warm person anyway. I said, I deliberately want to make you feel comfortable, because I know in the mock, when you feel comfortable, or when anyone feels comfortable, we let our guard down. What happens when we let our guard down? We say things we shouldn't have said. And I need to see that in the mock. And that's what happens. I said, and I don't like to watch people squirm, but I ask the questions that might be tough. And when it comes time to give them feedback, I'm not going to say to them, well, why did you say it? Like, why shame people? But there are interviewers who they feel that they have some power over someone else. And you could get someone, and that's what I tell them. You don't know who you're going to get as the interviewer, so you have to be prepared for that tough question.
Yeah. Exactly. Hey, can you believe it? Our time is almost up. I mean, we could go half hour or an hour, and it's almost an hour. So, of course, we could go on and on. So we can certainly do this again, because I had some other things I wrote down that I wanted to ask you about. Okay. So, how can people get a hold of you? What would you like to ask any questions or make a closing statement, Laura? Is there anything you haven't told us about yourself that you would like to tell us? No. How can people get a hold of you?
No, actually, I tried to share my story as someone who didn't have all the answers, was not confident. And I understand that many of us feel that way. And I think very often all it takes is someone outside of ourselves to see how terrific we really are. I think most people don't really see all their wonderful quality. I really believe that. Most of us don't see our special gifts. We have so much potential as human beings. And I know I'm one of them. I'm sure that's one of the reasons I love this kind of work. If I can't give this to myself, I'm sure going to try and give it to someone else. I think and that is a great question. You do ask such great questions. I hope that people can understand that with practice, this is a skill we can all develop: interviewing and being prepared and doing the due diligence and not giving up. One of the things I did that I don't like about myself is I gave up on me in my music years ago.
Right.
I didn't believe in myself enough. And we just have to keep at it, keep at it. And how can people get in touch with me? My email address, is that good?
Sure.
Okay. It's LRcareercoach@gmail.com.
Let me write that in the chat.
Okay.
Career coach, I hope I'm spelling this right, .com.
Yes, LR Career Coach. And sometimes I write couch. It's COA.
I know it. Is that correct? Is that LRcareercoach.com?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right.
At gmail.com. At gmail.com. My website is Laura, LAURA.
Is that your website though?
What? That's LRcareercoach@gmail.com is my email address.
What about your website?
Laura.
Okay, wait a second.
Okay.
Laura.
Rivchun, and I'll spell that RIV as in Victor, CHUN as in Nancy, at Laura, no, I'm sorry, it's LauraRivchun.com. Oh, see, we get confused. So let me start all over. It's Laura Rivchun, RIVCHUN.com. You can tell I don't visit my website often enough.
Okay.
And I can give my phone.
Phone? Okay.
917-951-1383. And I do offer free 30-minute consultations.
And does that look correct?
You got it. Yes, you got it. Excellent.
Okay, let me change the other one.
And I'm also on LinkedIn. I can't remember. I hate to admit it. I can't remember my URL on LinkedIn, but if they just, it's my name and they can find me.
Yeah,
they can find me with my name, and then they can see some of the posts that I write. They'll get a sense of who I am.
Yeah.
I hope. Yeah.
Well, I love your essence, and I had, like I said, I wrote down when we first started that you just love making a difference. You said that a couple times, and
I do. I would guess, and what I know of you, you're the same way.
Thank you.
Do what we do because we need more people to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, and particularly nowadays, a lot of us are hurting, and it doesn't take much. I felt that way when I was a very, very, even as a young girl, I wanted to do something that made a difference. Yeah. And I really enjoyed this time with you. Thank you so much for having me. Really, you ask all the right questions. It's great. It's great.
Okay, I'm going to hit a little button that ends the stream. We're going to go back to the green room, you and I.
Okay.
Okay, everyone, thank you for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.